Fish farming is a huge aquaculture system that is used to either restock fish to ponds, rivers, lakes, etc., or provide fish for cooking to restaurants and grocery stores. Fish farming can be found all around the United States and the world off the coast of any body of water, but even so, fish farming should not be found in the Great Lakes. Fish farming such as net pen and open water farming should not be allowed to transpire within the American regions of the Great Lakes due to the excess amount of pollution and other environmental issues it would cause.
Open water fish farms are often the cause of invasive species outbreaks across America. Several instances have occurred where thousands of fish have escaped into open waters from these operations. This leads to the breeding of these invasive species in water with little to no control and the depletion in population and resources for native fish. In a quote by Gudmundur Haukur Jakobsson, according to The Guardian, "This is an environmental catastrophe," he says. "If they breed, the salmon will lose their ability to survive." Indeed, studies have shown interbreeding between farmed and wild fish produce offspring that mature faster and younger, undermining the ability of the species to reproduce in nature. Jakobsson and his father have captured close to 44 farmed fish in just 2 weeks. The fish were identified by their round tails and torn fins. This is a humongous effect not only on the salmon but on all other species. Wild salmon populations have decreased drastically, causing less food sources for animals that prey on the salmon. Forcing these animals to hunt farmed salmon causes health problems for the predators because farmed salmon can carry diseases like sea lice. The salmon are biologically different from natural salmon, meaning they don't have the same nutritional value for these animals. Their breeding habits are also advanced, making them quickly an invasive species to the area. This issue hasn't been resolved yet, and the farmed fish are still being captured all over. Farmed fish have been found almost 100 miles away from the breakout point, meaning the farmed salmon can overtake wild and potentially affect fish all over the waters. This is just one example of the many outbreaks and consequences of having net pen fish farms, shining an even greater light onto why they shouldn't be allowed in our Great Lakes.
Another devastating repercussion of fish farming is the excess amount of waste leached into the body of water. Nitrogen and phosphorus found in the fish fecal matter are two of the main causes of unnecessary algae blooms that can ruin the ecosystem of a lake or a river. Nitrogen utilizes amino acids to stimulate the leaf and stem growth of the algae, while phosphorus is the main contributor to the root and seed development. The algae blooms consume oxygen in the water and block sunlight from plants, in turn depleting the food source for many creatures. According to former Michigan State Representative Gary Howell and former Michigan State Senator Rick Jones, a typical 200,000 fish operation creates as much waste as a city of 65,000 people. Not only are the algae blooms harmful to native fish and lakes, but they can have a direct impact on things such as drinking water. Algae blooms are known to have caused many drinking water shutdowns, but one very prominent instance was the Toledo drinking water shutdown of 2014. The Alliance for the Great Lakes reported on the situation, saying, on August 2, 2014, residents of Toledo, Ohio, awoke to urgent warnings not to drink or use their tap water. 500,000 people were unable to drink their water, cook with it, or even brush their teeth. The cause? Toxins from a harmful algal bloom growing in Lake Erie. These algae blooms were the result of phosphorus being leached into Lake Erie from fertilizer runoffs from nearby farms. This instance was not the result of a fish farm, but rather a typical crop farm. Both farms produced an excess amount of nitrogen and phosphorus, but net pen fish farms leached the chemicals directly into the water faster than land-based farm operations. If fish farms were allowed to transpire within the American regions of the Great Lakes, there would be an even greater increase in the amount of algae blooms that pollutes water systems.
There are many different ways fish stuck inside the farms can contract diseases. Farm-raised fish are fed and treated very differently than any fish would be in the wild. They are fed certain types of food that are not meant to help their health, but increase their meat tasting benefits. According to animalethics.org, they are often given food that is not healthy. It makes them grow faster, but causes health problems such as lipid visceral degeneration, a condition from which many fish suffer due to being fed products such as other fish and crustaceans with a high density of fat and carbohydrates. These are not the natural nor correct food sources for these fish to be fed. These eating habits cause them to get sick very easily, and then farm owners give them antibiotics, which can have harmful side effects. Illness contracted by the fish are not normally natural, meaning if the disease gets into the natural world, it can have atrocious consequences on the wild species that cannot fight off the unfamiliar lethal infection. Of the diseases that farm salmon contract, sea lice is one of the most common. According to Brian Owens, a Nature science writer, an example of how terrible the sea lice outbreak can be is in New Brunswick, Passamaquoddy Bay, where more than 250,000 died from the parasites, which attached themselves to the fish and fed on their skin, blood, and mucus, while another 284,000 were euthanized to try to contain the spread. The tight-knit environment in which the fish are kept is a perfect breeding ground for sea lice, making attack from the parasites so brutal. In the same article, Martin Krakosik states, and having so many hosts so close together also short-circuits the transmission cycle, he says, making it easier for parasites to jump from adult to juvenile fish. The result is that parasites are adapting to become more virulent, spreading faster and killing their hosts more quickly. Due to having such easier prey, the sea lice are actually growing and evolving as a species. Antibiotics are becoming faulty in destroying the parasite, threatening to create the ultimate parasite, which cannot be stopped and kill the majority of the salmon population.
Net pen fish farms are very clearly dangerous to both humans and nature due to their pollution, disease, and unpredictability. Many consider self-contained fish farms such as aquaponic farms to be a better alternative to net pen farming, as farmers raise their fish in tank systems on land and deal with any disease outbreak within their facilities. Writers from Farm Her reported on a couple from Wisconsin on their journey with an aquaponic fish farm and how they believe it to be a better and more sustainable option. The Wisconsin Fish Frenzy article states, the process is all natural, so instead of relying on fertilizers and chemicals, they raise fish in tanks and feed them a high-quality diet. The fish waste is filtered, broken down, and put into plant beds, then circles back to the fish. This sustainable alternative allows farmers to grow fish and produce in the same beds to save energy and costs, rather than running two separate farm operations. Self-contained fish farms also allow for fresh meat and produce year-round in areas that would otherwise have to import their goods, thus making them less fresh and accessible. These operations have benefits for the environment as well. According to writers from Flow, self-contained operations capture and treat their waste instead of dumping it into our common waters and shifting the cost to the public. Their use of recirculated water lessens the chances of disease and decay within the tanks, while also saving and reusing water. Since all farming is done on land, there is a far lesser chance of any contamination to wild fish in bodies of water. The reason many opt out of aquaponic fish farming and stick to net pens is cost and production. While being more environmentally friendly and sustainable, aquaponic farming is more expensive with a lower production rate than net pen farming. The safety and sustainability of self-contained fish farms should outweigh the cons, but still, many farmers will choose the cheaper and easier option.
Due to all the horrid consequences discussed of net pen fish farms, the Great Lakes should never be corrupted in such ways. A more sustainable and clean alternative to net pen fish farms would be self-contained farms, where fish can be raised on land in an environment that is easily controlled and accessible to consumers, while not contaminating the Great Lakes or any body of water.